I, 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 I. He got fired from Kane, now we ain't got no shame. So we started a pod, took Yates into town.
Hey everybody, welcome to Chuck Yates Needs a Job, the Thanksgiving edition. And with Thanksgiving, it's a time to be grateful. So I thought I'd have my friend Sean on and we'd talk about something he's grateful for, and that's Covenant House.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it with everything that you do in the community. It was, we just had the Sleepout last week, last Thursday. It's a Sleepout executive edition. So they do it every year. It was the 11th year. And it was awesome to see Houstonians rally around Covenant House, which is focused on homeless youth aged 18 to 24 who really have just come out of the foster care system for the most part.
Okay, so that's so we were lucky enough that a couple of the board members from Covenant House came to our breakfast club and talked about it. But what's kind of the story there? So when was Covenant House founded, et cetera?
So Covenant House was founded about 45 years ago, and it actually is in 31 cities around the world. But Covenant House, Texas, in Houston, which is over just off of Montrose, is the only one in Texas. And it serves homeless youth aged 18 to 24. So it's usually people who've just come out of the foster care system. And the whole mission behind Covenant House is it's not about short-term solutions. Obviously, they've got emergency crisis centers, and Covenant House, Texas will sleep pre-COVID up to 130 people a night, usually with 20 on emergency mats on the floor, and they're still turning 30 or 40 away a night. But the whole purpose to Covenant House is to provide these youth an opportunity to have a safe place to sleep, to get mentoring, to get medical care, both physical and mental health care. It allows them to have job interview training, mentorship programs, and teaching them how to conduct themselves in an interview, right? And it's about giving. One of the board members at Covenant House is a guy named Todd Beignet, fantastic guy. But he likened it to a hand up as opposed to a hand out. And so a lot of these homeless youth haven't finished high school, so they'll get their GED. Some of them will go on to college. But the whole purpose is to get them gainfully employed and provide them with the foundation so that they can give back to the community. And it's a great mission.
Because basically, I mean, what happens with the state, right, is you're in the foster care program and age 18 or the end of your senior year in high school, somewhere in around there, game over, right?
That's
it's
right.
Just, hey, you're done. Good luck, kid, right?
And at the age of 18, you are out of the foster care system. And a really scary statistic is that within 24 to 36 hours of children leaving the foster care system, they're approached by human traffickers.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. So it makes you wonder, like, why is that? Why does that happen? Well, it's because the human traffickers know where the foster homes are, and it's an awful system. It's a great system, but there's a lot of things that I think could be done better, and that statistic is one that really catches people off guard.
No, it just caught me off guard because it's, it's a really hard problem, right?
Yes.
What do you do with a kiddo that's in trouble? Mm-hmm. What do you do with them if they shouldn't be with their parents? What if they don't have parents, et cetera? Yep. And, you hear horror stories coming out of the foster care system, and there are a lot of great people involved in that. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, I guess in my gut, if you would have said, hey, you turn 18, what happens? Well, your foster care family then, raises some money and sends you to college, and it just doesn't happen that way.
There's no training. There's nothing. You're 18 and move on. I think that I heard a statistic on Thursday night. So when we did the Sleepout, we actually had something new this year where we had what they called sleep talks. And so like a TED Talk, but one of the things that people really enjoy about the Sleepout, in addition to being out there and giving something back, is just the learning about what's going on in the systems. And so one of the sleep talks was on the foster care system. I'll share another scary statistic with you there. Another one was with human trafficking, the mental and physical health of the homeless youth. Nearly 100% of nearly 100% of the residents who come into Covenant House today have a mental health issue, whether it's anxiety or PTSD because of the stresses you were talking about. And then Houston HPD SWAT was there to talk about how they see the homeless problem and how they're trying to handle it. The the thing I was going to tell you about the foster care system is there are some amazing organizations out there, but the lady who was speaking on Thursday night said that if every church in Texas took one child, there would not be a foster care system. And her point was that it's not just about when a youth is adopted or brought into the foster care, there's no support afterwards, right? There's no ongoing life change, development or progression of this is how you can handle it. This is how of growing together as a family. And when people heard that stat about, if every church in Texas would sponsor one family to take one child, you'd solve the problem.
Oh, wow. Because, I mean, I'm sitting here at 54 years old 3 days ago calling my dad for advice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, to be 18 years old and not have that, and knowing you're not going to have that
Right.
for the rest of your life is really tough. So Covenant House, give me the lay of the land in Houston. It's a physical building. People come. What does that look like?
So Covenant House is on the corner of it's over by Montrose and Yoakum, on Lovett Street. Now that location is right in the center of Montrose, and it's a great location. It's about 2.7 acres. The building was about 45 years old, though, so it was not fit for purpose. So Covenant House actually this year had tore down the old facility. They did it about a month and a half ago, and they've just crossed the $40 million mark for a $57 million capital raise for what they're calling the building of life. And so currently the Covenant House residents are all living in housing down in the 3rd Ward. So didn't miss a beat, still taking care of all the kids and providing them the shelter and the security that they've become accustomed to. But the new facility that's going to be built it's going to be able to house 50% more homeless youth in a night. It's going to have a gym for physical care. It'll have a library. It's going to have a full medical facility, dining area. It's going to be designed to provide better housing, better facilities to hopefully end homelessness.
Well, and you know what's important about this that I think is underappreciated is a lot of the communities that are served by charities. I'm on the board of an after-school literacy program for Houston's 5th Ward. One of the key issues is just the transient nature of the population, meaning you're a kid in the 5th Ward and you go live with your grandmother and then she passes you off to an aunt.
Yeah.
And so just the lack of permanency, the lack of stability in your life leads to a lot of these things, mental health type issues. And so going and building a big freaking building that's going to be there for 100 years actually means a lot. Yeah. They know they can come back and see it. And that's one of the things we did at YDC is right in the middle of the 5th Ward. We built a $5 million building, and it's a nicer facility than my kids go to school at. And that was really important because it says to the community, hey, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We're not renting space. And so I think it's important that you do that.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that I give a lot of credit to the board and the management of Covenant House because look, you've got 2.7 acres in the heart of downtown. There's high rises going up all over the place. They very easily could have sold that property and built something huge outside of town. But that's not where the problem is, right? And so all of these youth and the homeless in general know where Covenant House is. And so what you referenced with respect to the person going to the aunts, to the grandmothers, to the friends, it's called couch surfing, right? So it's you're constantly trying to find that new location that you can stay until somebody kicks you out for whatever reason. But at the same time, you have youth who are 13, 14, 15 years old who are living in tents and encampments by themselves, right? And so last week when we were doing the Sleepout, you had about 100 executives from around Houston, and you're sleeping on a cardboard box in the elements. It was Thursday night. It was about 42, 43 degrees. I think it got down to. Didn't rain though, right? But there was no cover if it did. Friday night there was a lot of rain. I imagine being exposed to that. But the one thing that you didn't experience as an executive sleeping out was the fear, right? So a lot of these homeless youth, they can't sleep at night, or because that's when things happen. So they try to find places to protect themselves. And they call it homeless in plain sight. And it's incredible what these kids go through, and to be able to continue to be curious, continue to want to grow, to continue to want to give back. It's an amazing organization because they meet you where you meet them where they are, right? And you let that process unfold in terms of their own growth and development. But when we did the Sleep Out Thursday night, the way that we closed the evening was with a panel of past residents. So people who were residents of Covenant House back in the early 90s were there. But what we didn't know was one of the women who works at the Ion as a security guard. We had no idea. She said, "It's so great that Covenant House is here doing this. I was a resident of Covenant House back in the early 2000s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how do you find the kiddos?
Yeah.
I mean,
so it's a lot of what happens actually is through the permanence of the location, right? So people become familiar with who Covenant House is in the different foster care communities or pediatric hospitals that become aware of it. But something that is really unique or interesting about the homeless population is there's a hierarchy there, but there's also there's a care. And so what Covenant House will do 3 or 4 times a week is they'll do outreach. And so about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, they'll go around to all the different homeless populations, the encampments and what have you. And they'll just hand out food. They'll hand out toiletries, just things to let people know that Covenant House is there. So what ends up happening is the people who are institutionally homeless, if you will, so that's when you get to be 25 and above, they actually know where the kids are, because the kids are usually hiding in abandoned houses, or they'll be in the back of an encampment, and then they'll direct the kids to Covenant House. But usually, and I don't think it happened this year, but in past outreaches when we've done that for Sleep Out, we'll find a homeless youth and bring them back to Covenant House with us. So it's just being out there in the community, being a constant source of information, a constant source of reassurance, and people will tell the other members of the community, where to go if they need help.
oh, that's cool. And I could actually see that if I'm homeless and been on the streets for 10 or 15 years, not wanting a kid to go through what I went through. And so, hey, kid, you need to get over here.
Mm-hmm. It happens quick. I mean, it really is. It's pretty frightening when you think about how quickly homelessness can happen to a person. The first year that I did it, we were down by the library in downtown Houston, where there's a pretty decent homeless population at times. And there was a person there. He was married until a couple months before, got divorced, lost his job, and all of a sudden he was on the street. And what you what you realize about homelessness is nobody wants it, right? And it can happen quickly. So you've got, I mean, your comment about Thanksgiving, right? There's a lot to be grateful for, but the empathy, the compassion that you see in the homeless people that you go out and meet with through outreach or through the Sleepout is amazing. They're the kindest people that you can imagine. When we were doing it on Thursday night, we handed out about 300 meals around Houston, and I had one experience where we were just about to pack up and move on to the next spot, and a woman came, basically running across the street and said, "You didn't get that guy." And there was a person who was sleeping, and so she took the meal, brought it back, put it right next to him, so that when he woke up, he was going to have something. And I've seen things like people ripping their cheeseburgers in half because you ran out of food and people are just trying to share. There's a real kindness and a real gratitude.
Yeah, it was interesting. One morning, my brother Kenny calls me and says, "Hey, man, do you mind riding with me? I lost my wallet." And this guy called from downtown and said he found it. And I just don't want to go by myself. I said, "Sure." Turned out the guy was homeless, played basketball for the University of Hawaii. Wasn't going to play in the NBA, but played long enough that he was going to be able to graduate. Said he tried meth. Don't know why he did it.
Yeah.
And just 3 years later, he's hooked and he's homeless in Houston.
Yeah.
But I mean, a good dude, found Kenny's wallet, called Kenny, actually took some effort to be able to figure out, because Kenny's got his driver's license, had to call information, did that, didn't want any money. Hey, no, I don't, of course we gave him money, but it was like, hey, I don't want any money. I just want to make sure you got this back and the like. And just hooked on meth, has a kid, and all. And it was,
That's something that, I think is that is great about what Covenant House does as well, which is a lot of these homeless youth, not a lot, but they have their own children, right? 14, 15 years old, and they're having their own babies. And so the cycle just feeds on itself. And so one of the things that they try to do at Covenant House, they do at Covenant House, is they try to provide some sort of family guidance. They take care of the children's children, if you will. And drugs are a huge part of the problem, but it comes from a lot of different areas. I mean, the residents of Covenant House come from all sorts of neighborhoods, and it's not just and frankly from all over Texas. And that's how well Covenant House Texas has become known in the broader community.
Because, at the end of the day, Brene Brown's research will say that when we don't feel we're worthy of love, that leads to all the problems. That's why we drink too much. That's why we do drugs, et cetera. And it's finding something to fill that void. And I mean, nothing like making you feel unworthy of love than getting passed around. Right. I mean, so.
And then when you're 18, the check stops, so get out.
Yeah.
No,
you've quote unquote been our child for the last 2 years because we were getting paid. Now get out.
Get out. Yeah. And I think, and you hear those stories and they're gut wrenching, right? And when I started doing the Sleepout about 5 years ago, this is my 5th year. A friend of mine was a board member at Covenant House. He since has passed away, but we all went the first year to do the Sleepout because he couldn't do it. He was going through chemo treatments. And what we all saw was the generosity. What I saw was the generosity of the community, right? And I think, Houston is an amazing city, right? It's the energy hub. It's, we were at the Ion, which is the innovation hub. You've got the medical center. You've got some amazing universities. But the generosity of the people in our community, the thoughtfulness, the pragmatism of
unmatched in the world.
I totally
believe that
yeah.
too. Every time somebody rags on the energy business, I'm like,
no.
At minus $37 a barrel, YDC did not go under.
No. And go over the last 5 years in energy, right? My first year, I raised $37,000 or $17,000. Sorry. This year, I raised $104,000, right? And for the Sleepout itself, we've raised $1,037,000. We've got new corporate sponsorships from energy companies, but it's the energy executives, because that's my business, right? Is energy. So those are the people who I know, but they love to give back, and they want to understand why. They want to know that there's a cost benefit to it, right? So accountability. So it's evidence-based programming. It's not about handouts. It's about how are you making things better. But this is an incredibly generous community, and I've just, to me, with all of the vitriol and that energy gets, right? I don't think that people outside of the energy community just know how generous the executives, the people that work here are. Just amazing, amazing people.
Yeah, no, that's right. And so what is kind of and there may not be anything, but what's a typical day for a kid in the program? And then what's kind of a typical life cycle of the kid in the program?
Sure. So the day is going to be contingent on where they are in terms of how recently they've gotten there, right? How there's a lot of space given. There's a trust issue, right? So the first few weeks or months, and it all depends on the kid, is just making sure that they're safe, they're secure, they feel loved, right? They're getting the medical care that they need. They're getting the mental health care that they need. There's counseling. And, as somebody is progressing, as they become more comfortable within Covenant House, as they start to proactively contribute, right? They proactively want to go to the next level. So there'll be the emergency care facility, and then there is an intermediate facility, and then there's what is called the Rites of Passage program. And so the Rites of Passage program is where Covenant House youth are, they have their own apartment or their own room. They are working or at school. So whether that's high school or college, it's usually college, but they're also working out in the community. They're saving 30% of their income so that when they do graduate from the Rites of Passage program and they're out in the community, they've got a nest egg. Covenant House isn't saying, hey, you've had housing for the last 18 months and now, you're just going to go out into the world with nothing, right? So Covenant House helps them learn how to manage their own finances, how to have a budget. And what I think is amazing about the program, and then at 25, that's when they have to graduate out of Covenant House, because that's just where the age limit is. They end up being in an environment where they can make mistakes, right? They can do something wrong. And I heard a story from Leslie Bourne, who runs Covenant House, just an amazing lady, where one of the youth had gotten their first job. It was at McDonald's. It was, across the street off Westheimer, and they, made it about 2 weeks, right? So instead of coming back and getting beaten up or, admonished for why didn't you keep your job? Like what happened? You should have shown up on time. It was like, okay, you made it 2 weeks. So what's next? Right. And it's just that the ability to celebrate that we're all going to fall down. It's okay if you fall down. We're not going to ridicule you for it. We're going to help you get back up and move forward. And so with every youth, it's different. I don't know that there is a constant progression.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So you've you've been talking about this sleep out, and kind of what I've gathered from listening to it is you're recruiting folks to go sleep outside, i.e. experience what homelessness is. How are you raising money off that? You mentioned sponsors, but how does the fundraiser work?
So it's always the Thursday before Thanksgiving. Okay. So we did it last Thursday, and again, it was all the Covenant houses around the world. And there's 31 of them. I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier. And so what we'll end up doing in September is when we'll kick off in earnest about reaching out to executives, reaching out to leaders in the community to have them join us for the Sleep Out. And so when you sign up for the Sleep Out Executive Edition, there's actually a Young Professionals Edition in the spring, but the Executive Edition, you sign on and agree to try and raise $5,000 through donations or what have you. And, some people come in, write the $5,000 check themselves and they do it. Other people go out and raise, $50 here, $50 there. We had one new sleeper this year. A guy, Don Childress, he actually sponsored for the first time this year, but Don, first time sleeper, raised over $30,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so you just go out and you let people know what you're doing and you let them know why you're doing it. And I think that and then in terms of the sponsorships, that's something where this year we've had a number of new sponsors. New energy companies have come in. Enterprise was a corporate sponsor this year. Western Gas sent a team. Kinder Morgan has people there. I mean, so historically, the Covenant House had a lot of real estate and a lot of legal professions. So Jackson Walker's a huge sponsor, Loch Lord. But I was like, well, I'm in energy. I need to get the energy folks in here because they're way too generous. And so we've been building that out.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So $1 million, what's like the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years looked like in terms of fundraising?
Yeah. So the first year they did it, there were about 15 sleepers and they raised about $200,000, I think. Last year, it was the 10th anniversary of the Sleep Out. We raised $1.25 million, and there were about 120 sleepers. This year, we're at $1,037,000. We had a very large donation last year, so I'm really proud of where we are so far. But we're at $1,037,000. We had 167 sleepers, and 100 people actually were able to sleep out because there were some sleepers who signed up from different parts of Texas. So yeah, we're trying to get to 1.25 million by the end of the year, December 31st, and over 95% of the money raised goes to the organization, the operating expenses of Covenant House, and so it's a great event. I was thinking about this as I was talking to folks about it this year. There's a lot of incredible charities and charitable events, dinners, and what have you in Houston. Again, it's a really generous town. I've been to 3 or 4 over the course of the last month. Right, what the Sleep Out is an entirely different experience. It is absolutely experiential because you are there with the youth that you're helping all night long. So from the minute you walk in the door, they're giving you your name tag, to the stories that they're telling you when they were 14 and abused and they ran away, and the 16-year-old who's living in a tent. And then you conclude the evening about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night by pulling out a cardboard box, getting in your sleeping bag, no pillows, and you're beholden to the elements. And you realize that the human body is not meant to sleep on concrete or cardboard boxes. So in the morning, they'll do a we'll do a reflection. It's pretty somber. So when everybody gets up and walks away, and people go to work or what have you, uh, it's a very uh, quiet egress, if you will, because no one's happy because you've seen a lot. Your eyes have been opened to the reality of what these kids go through, the fact that they are kids. That we had a question, or we had one of the panels, and they were talking about the mental and physical health, and some of the questions that um, the doctors get are you know very basic elementary things that your fifth or sixth grader would know, right? But I asked the question, so do you find that the kids are curious? Like, do they want to know more about their health or more about their mental well-being? And it was it there's a it's a uniform absolute yes. I mean, these kids want to learn more, they want to participate, they want to give back, and they're so grateful to have all of these leaders, if you will, executives in the community out there willing to sleep out in solidarity, because we can never recreate that experience, like the true experience, but just to raise awareness and the acknowledgement that what you go through is really hard, and we're here to try to help it get better.
Well, Sean, it's really cool you did that. How do people find Covenant House? How do
Yep.
people sign up for next year? Give us kind of the contact deets, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next sleep out will be November, I think it's November 16th, 2023. So it's the Thursday before Thanksgiving. The development person is Felicia Broussard, and the website is Covenant House Texas, or covenanthouse.tx.org. So covenanthouse.tx.org. And we'll start recruiting new sleepers probably sometime in the summer, but there's a lot of things that you can do at Covenant House over the course of the next 12 months if you want to come down and help out. I've brought my kids down there to wrap Christmas presents. You can There'll be a night of Broadway stars in the spring, which is there's a Covenant House in New York, and some obviously amazing Broadway shows in New York. But one of the members of the board of Covenant House in New York actually travels around the country with Broadway stars, and they put on a performance of different musicals um, in a given evening. And so it's an amazing event if you like Broadway. And there's some other random events throughout the course of the year, but covenanthouse.tx.org. And I was executive chair this year. I'm thinking I'm going to pass the reins to somebody next year for the sleep out.
Sounds like Don Childress.
Sounds like Don Childress.
Yeah.
But it gets better every year, and it gets better because more and more people know about it. Because people like you, thank you for having me here to talk about this. I mean,
my mom will listen to it. So,
well, it's every little bit helps, right? It's just, and when you talk to these youth, like, they don't want money, right? They want a hello. They want you to look them in the eye. They want 5 minutes of time. They want a prayer. They want some mentorship. And I think that when you realize how little it takes, if everybody just gave a little bit, we could go a long way in solving a lot of problems.
Well, one of our mutual friends, Patrick Miller, who's made a couple of appearances on the podcast, but the priest at
Never with me.
never with you, but the priest at St. Mark's Episcopal Church, one of the things he always talks about is when you see a homeless person at the corner, you cannot deny them humanity. You need to look them in the eyes.
Yes.
You need to wave hello. Patrick actually suggests carrying a bottle of water and socks.
Yes.
And handing those out, because there is an issue that potentially you're handing cash, it turns to drugs.
Right.
But that Patrick's big on do not deny them the humanity, because they're human.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting, the singer Jewel, who's my dear friend, she was homeless. I mean, she signed a record deal. She was homeless, and she has a great joke about it. She was living out of her car, and her car got stolen. Fortunately, she wasn't in it, but no, and just how dehumanizing it was to be looked away at, and someone not recognizing you as a person. Yeah. So it's a real thing.
Yeah, and I think Patrick is always really eloquent, right? But he's spot on. It's look at them, acknowledge them. You notice when people don't look you in the eye, right? And what you find with the homeless when you go out there and you're doing outreach and giving them meals, they want to look you in the eye. They want to say thank you. That's all they want to be acknowledged. And I think that is something that we should all strive to do, in our daily interactions. But with the homeless in particular, they want to be acknowledged, and the giving of toiletries or essentials or socks or water bottles, I think that it's a great practice. They definitely don't encourage giving out money. Because unfortunately there's bad actors out there, and it can end up in bad places. But when everybody left the Sleepout, there were donation bags. So they had little bags that you could give to homeless people as you were driving by, and it had the Covenant House card in it so that people knew where to go. But the treating each other humanely and with humanity, I think, goes a long way. And that's all that these youth and I think the homeless want.
Well, Sean, you were great to do that, and you were great to come on today.
Thanks, Chuck. Always a pleasure, and hopefully Patrick will be on sometime with me.
There we go.
We can talk about fun stuff like energy or whatever.
The joke with Patrick is he comes on, I think he was the third podcast I ever did. He came on later, and we had to talk about how sequels suck. So, I mean, is there
the third one better?
Is there a part 3 movie that's actually decent? I mean, I kind of liked Back to the Future Part 3. I mean, that was
Return of the Jedi was okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Return of the Jedi was
We
good.
could do that.
We could do that.
So it'll be George Lucas level when you and Patrick come on.
Definitely not National Lampoons.
Yes. Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. Or any movie that contains Dom DeLuise.
Awesome.
Sean, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Chuck. Pleasure to be here.